Hey, everybody. Welcome back. So glad you could join us for today's lesson with our wonderful teacher, Bridget Rampton. It's always a treat for me to be able to spend time with this class. Folks literally from all over the world still just find that so cool. Bridget, already I love the lesson. Folks joining us from England, I've been thinking of you this week. Hey, Jay Brown, Caroline, George, Sue, other folks in the room, perhaps just warming up. Linda, Ro, thank you guys for already making it the friendly and fun place in the live chat. Folks who haven't jumped into the live chat, I hope you'll feel invited to join in with your questions, with your answers to Bridget's questions. Your involvement really helps her know when to speed up, when to slow down. You are also doing a service for folks who can't be with us live, because your questions might be the ones that they have while they're watching later, but they can't ask us in the middle of the live lesson. So keep it up. We'll all keep learning together. It's a treat for me, especially to be able to join today. I'm packing up with my family for our big trip to visit friends and family back in the States. So next week, we'll have Caroline back hosting, introducing Bridget. I'll be watching the replays. I will also be around always, to help out in any sort of support way. You can always reach me personally, hello@learnbridgeonline.com. I'll say that quickly again once we start the recording. Thank you, Jay Brown. It's a real special time to be able to see old friends and family. I know I'm not the only international person here right now, so I think a number of folks know the deal. Let me start the recording, and we will get going. As the recording's firing up, folks here live, right above my head, you'll see underneath the LearnBridge Online logo, it says click here for support. You can use that to get all of the backup links. Okay, here we go. The recording is active. We can welcome everyone in the class, unable to be with us live, but very much part of the class. Maybe next week you can be with us. I won't be able to attend live next week, but our wonderful Caroline will be back in the hosting seat introducing Bridget. I was just saying, for folks here with us live, if you need any tech support, if you're running into any tech trouble, don't leave that in the live chat where it can distract from the learning, both folks here live and watching by replay. Instead, for folks live, you'll see click here for support that has all of our recommendations and backup links. And for folks watching by replay, if you need any support, you can still always reach me. Just email hello@learnbridgeonline.com. I'll help out however I can. Feel free to just say hi too. I always love hearing from folks as well. Okay, I think we can get to it. Hey, Jeanette, so glad to have you with us today. We don't need to go through those. It's all in the head. We're ready to go. Let's find our teacher. Bridget, come on up.
Here I am.
Hey, Bridget.
You found me.
Yay. Well, I hope everyone's doing all right in England. It was sounds like it was a heartbreaker, but a noble effort.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, they've been good and bad, of course. I mean, there was always the rugby to talk about.
Oh, I'm ignorant to it. Tell us the good news, or maybe we should save it for the end.
Rugby was a good thing. Football wasn't a good thing. So pros and cons, a bit like your bridge, right?
There we go. There we go. We have to celebrate the wins, and we learn from the losses.
Exactly. I've got a really fun lesson today, actually, and ever since I've been thinking about it and talking about it, it's been sort of making me process and think more and more and more about the head game of bridge. And then I started asking people and asking my friends, asking my students what they thought. So when you said feedback, I would especially love it on this lesson. I want to really hear about everyone's experiences so we can kind of talk about them and work on them and see how different ways people have of approaching things.
That's wonderful. And just a reminder, folks, you can leave any bridge questions or feedback that you don't mind sharing with the whole class. You can leave that on the class page or just email it in, and Bridget and I will talk privately if you'd prefer, it be anonymous. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this lesson very much. And of course, this lesson will be there for everyone in the lesson library, as I imagine it's one we'll want to return to many times in the future.
Cool. Okay, well, let's get cracking, shall we?
Over to you, Bridget. I'll see you at the end of the lesson.
See you soon. Bye. Okay, let's just shrink me down here and bring up the slide. First question, who knows who this chap is on the front page? Come on, I'm sure all the Kiwis know. Georgie doesn't know. No? Oh, Trisha looks like she might know. Ro doesn't. He's a very famous New Zealander, this guy. So this is for the New Zealanders. He's a rugby player. Yes, he's definitely a rugby player. Yay! Well done, Sue. It's Damian McKenzie. So he's super famous in New Zealand. And the reason I popped him on is because he's the kicker, right? So he has to get that rugby ball over the posts. And the reason I've put him on is because if you look at his face, he's got this cute little smile going on. So I said to my son, we were watching the rugby together. Okay, Veronica, ask your grandson, he'll know. So I said to my son, why do you think Damian McKenzie does that little smile? It's kind of sweet, but like it's kind of weird as well. And my son said, and he's living in New Zealand, he said, it's because he went to see the sports psychologist. And basically what he's trying to do is get his head in the right place before he kicks the ball over the post. So he's kind of got this routine. He gets everything set up when he needs to kick the ball. And he does this little kind of smile to himself. It's like I got this smile. It's like a focus. I got this. I'm feeling good about myself before he kicks the ball. And I really like that because I can totally relate to that with bridge. Sometimes you just have to kind of reset, stop, try and get your head in the right place before you do something. So that's why I popped Damian on the front page. Today, we are all talking about the head game of bridge. So as I said to Bashir, I would love some of your input into it. I'm sure as we talk through this, things are going to be sparking in your minds as well, and experiences will come back to you too. So please pop feedback into the box or feedback afterwards as well, and questions, because I would love to hear about different people's experiences. So let's get started. First one is things to think about with the game of bridge. So most of you have probably realized by now that bridge is a real experience game. It's totally about the number of hands and the time that you have put into bridge. And I always sort of think about how bridge compares with chess. In bridge, you hardly ever get child prodigies, and it's because you just have to have the experience. Whereas something like chess, some kids will just be naturally brilliant at it and be able to see things and work things through and progress very, very quickly. Bridge, it tends to be a much longer road for people, but that's a good and a bad thing. The reason I love it is I feel that it means that there's potential for anybody who wants to put the time in with bridge. If you decide that you want to go down that little road towards bridge, the great bridge heights, it's just a matter of doing it, thinking what you're doing, and building the whole way with bridge, which is a good and a bad thing. I mean, in the old days, bridge players used to peak at about 40, I think 40 was the age that was when a sort of top bridge player would peak. And now it's gone down a bit down a lot actually, to about 30. Does anyone have a thought about why that might be? Like why, given that it's such an experience game, why do you think maybe now that when bridge players tend to peak is a bit younger? And it's kind of obvious when you think about it. It's an experience game. It's the number of hands that you play. It's just having seen all those different outcomes, having worked through all the different situations. Why do you reckon it might be that the average bridge age for peaking has gone down? It's really interesting, actually. It's not actually because people are starting younger, or though you do get some people starting younger. Yeah, George has got it. It's online. Now you can go online and fast track yourself. So before you had to actually physically go and play bridge, play at a club, play with people, and the number of actual physical hands you can get through is so much slower. Whereas now with online available to you, if you want to fast track your bridge, and I thoroughly recommend this to all of you, if you simply get up at 7 o'clock in the morning every single day and play through till 7 at night, you'll see a lot of bridge hands. That's all you have to do. But if you are a bridge obsessive, you can now fast track your game so much more quickly because you can just completely up the number of hands you play because it's available to you online. which is an interesting idea. But even then, it's still going to take you years, even if you do decide to fully commit yourself to bridge and do the daily 12-hour shift. It will still take you a long time because it's such an experienced game. But that's always a really good thing to think about with bridge, because I find often people judge themselves way too harshly. They sort of think, oh, I'm such a moron, I'm such an idiot. But it's an experienced game. You just can't know what you don't know. So just give yourself time and realize that a lot of things will come with experience, and try and get yourself as much experience as you can. So some things you can learn, more quickly in this experience journey, and some things will just take longer. And as I said, just be patient with yourself. It takes time. Things I sort of like to think of my bridge journey anyway, or my bridge learning, as being able to divide them into sort of two different categories. So things that you can sort of do in the short term to really improve your game, versus things that you do in the long term to really improve your game. In the short term, things that you can do that will make a big difference, I think, is to fully get your head around the scoring. Not understanding the scoring in bridge is simply a matter of being lazy and of not having put the time in to learn the scoring. I mean, you can sit down, get out your, look it up online, or get out a bidding box and fully understand the scoring in a couple of hours if you want to. And it will give you an advantage if you do that, because it means that you know when you should be pushing for game, when you should be stopping, how much you're risking when you go down, when you should be aggressive and when you shouldn't be. And I'm often surprised by good players at the club who don't know the score. And whenever I see a sort of decent player not know what the score is at the end of a game and have to pull out the bidding box and look at the back to see what the score is, I'm always quite surprised. I think, how can you not know the scoring? It's so fundamental. And I know it's sort of easy to be a bit lazy these days because it comes up automatically and because it's on the back of the bidding box. But I think just get really familiar with the scoring. It will give you an advantage. You'll just have that little bit more understanding than other people. And as I said, it's only a couple of hours work. Just sit down, nut through it, get out your pen and paper and nut through the scoring and just learn that scoring. The other easy-ish thing to do, I think, is to become very familiar with your basic bidding toolbox. So you'll have stuff that you and your partner play, or that you play and most of your club play. If you can just learn that and become very familiar with it, it's about half the game, really. It's a big part of the game. And when I started, because I hadn't, had the experience, obviously, and there were other people who had a lot more experience than me, I figured out that if I just became really, really good at the bidding, that would give me about half the game. So I could become an expert on half the game. And then the other stuff, like all the declarer play, all the defense, that I was going to have to be more patient with myself. I knew that was going to be a longer process for me, but I can fast track the easy stuff. And then the harder long-term experience stuff, that will just come over time as you put your work in and as you sort of put your effort in. So I think for me, that's my big tip, really. Focus on the things that are easy to learn, because that will just jump you ahead, like easy to learn the scoring. And actually it is easy to learn the bidding. And then be patient with yourself about the long-term goals and just think, yep, I haven't seen that situation before. I'm not judging myself on that situation. I didn't know that before, but I do know it now. And let those things just take their time and build them and be a little bit more patient with those things. What's Judith saying? Need to go over your video lessons again. Yeah, they're all there. Go over them as much as you like and as much as you can. So first things first, getting your head in the right space at the table. So I don't know if many of you think too hard about this. I imagine probably quite a lot of you do. You try and find, arrive at the bridge table, or if you're playing online, sit down online. But I'm sure sometimes you've noticed that if you're not really in exactly the right headspace when you start, then your performance won't be as good. And recently I had this lovely woman turn up for a bridge match. We'd arranged a bridge match with another club, and she's a super competent bridge player. And something went wrong with her link to the online platform we were playing on. She got kind of flustered, kind of ended up in a panic. She was running late, got online, completely misbid the first hand, which was a slam, and kind of got a 0%, and was just really, really upset about it, was beating herself up and blaming herself. But it was just simply a matter of her being just a bit flustered. at the beginning. And I'm sure, from now on, having had that experience happen to her, she'll always try and just be logged on sort of 5-10 minutes earlier, just to make sure that nothing can go wrong. That situation is easy really to get rid of. And if you start off in a bad place, it can be really, really hard at the bridge table. You just sort of end up flustered and nervous, and then things will go wrong. Real life at the table, I just say try and arrive on time and be settled and comfortable and have things the way you like them at the table. I also really like agreeing with my partner at the table, just as a principle, that we don't talk about the hands after we play them, unless there's something really important that we need to go through. So say someone just didn't understand something fundamental about the bidding, and we need to just clarify that with each other. I think just having a calm, peaceful table is a really, really good idea, to try and just keep yourself comfortable, not with a high level of anxiety, just in a good, comfortable space at the table where you can just go through, take each board at a time, really enjoy yourself, but not be feeling uncomfortable or in a panic or getting cross with your partner or confused. It's a really good idea, I think, to talk about things a bit later. Some people get really nervous at the table. I don't know. How do you stop opponents irritatingly talking about their hands? I know, Tricia, this does my head in as well. I mean, sometimes I just say nicely to people, do you mind if you just chat about this afterwards? Sometimes you can't actually do anything about it. Some people are bizarre. Sometimes you turn up at a table and the opponents will be talking about the last hand, and they'll be so engrossed in talking about the last hand and what went wrong, they won't even bother to say hello to you, which I always find a bit strange. But you're perfectly within your rights to just say nicely, oh, look, do you mind if we just focus on the next hand now and move on, and you two chat about this later? So it sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. I would almost, down here I've said try to not get irritated by surrounding noise. I would almost put that irritating noise into that category of the opponents just chatting, sort of blah, 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 blah about the last hand. Sometimes as well, that blah, blah, blah about the last hand can be a little bit intimidating. Sometimes they might be more experienced players than you, and they'll start talking about something you know nothing about. And you'll think, oh my goodness, this is awful. I'm completely out of my depth here, and it all sort of puts you on edge. So don't listen to it. Just think, talk to the hand. I'm not listening. I'm getting into my own space at the table. I play with one very, very nice woman sometimes. She's not my regular bridge partner, but I play with her occasionally when my partner's not around. And she actually puts earplugs in when she sits at the table. She says, hi, Bridget, it's nice to see you. I'm sorry now. I'm going to put my earplugs in, so I'll talk to you at the end of the session. And she puts her earplugs in, zones out the rest of the room, and just quietly plays each hand very calmly. And actually, it's probably a great tip. I'm just probably a little bit too addicted to talking to people at the table a wee bit and saying hi, but that's what she does. And it really works for her. So if you find that sort of thing could work for you, give it a go. You can do whatever you like. Never be embarrassed about these things. Feeling nervous at the table. I always find this really funny. And I have definitely been so nervous at the table that sometimes I feel that the whole table can probably hear my heartbeat. I don't know if you're one of those people. Not everybody is, but I've been like that before. But I had one friend of mine, the woman I was teaching bridge to, and she's a very competent, super high achieving woman. She's one of these, has been a top London banker. She's sitting down at the table and she's got a Garmin heartbeat monitor on her hand. And when she's playing bridge, it started beeping. It started going beep, 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 beep. And then it says, slow down, you're putting yourself at risk from over-exercising. So her Garmin watch thought that she was running so hard or doing such violent exercise that she was at risk for her age of damaging her heart, basically, which I thought was hilarious. But at the same time, I can also relate to it. Sometimes you do feel like that. Bridge is this game that has this funny effect on us. And it really does. It is just a card game. You can tell yourself that as often as you like, but it can make you feel like that. So sometimes just acknowledging that is a good thing to do. Just think, I'm feeling really nervous here. I'll settle in a minute. I'll calm down. Let's just take it one step at a time. That's just me being nervous, but I know I'll calm down later. Just kind of own it and then try and move on from it, because you do calm down. Even if you feel, sometimes I've sat down against like world-class top players, absolutely brilliant players, and I just think, oh no. But then I think, no, it's going to be okay. I'm just going to play one hand at a time. It's really, really, really not going to be that bad. So getting yourself in the right headspace at the table is step one. And just think about things that work for you. I mean, people really are different here. And don't be ashamed or embarrassed about doing what you think is right for you. So even if it is putting earplugs in, or arranging your pens in a way that you really like them, or some people wear their favorite shirt. I mean, just do whatever you like that makes you feel comfortable. And then you'll find that if you can get yourself settled, it's a bit like Damien McKenzie getting himself ready to kick the ball. If you can get yourself into a good headspace, you're going to do better. It will be better for you. When things go wrong at the table. Okay, we'll talk about this one in a minute, but I've just thought about something else about the experts. One thing I think when I do feel a bit intimidated by people, and also this is just a general rule actually as well, a general thought for when you are playing your bridge, is that because bridge is such a game of experience, and also because it is just a game of just purely number of hands, to be a good player, what you're really trying to do is just not sort of stuff up that much. And weirdly, I was watching, someone sent me a thing from TikTok yesterday, and it was about Federer. I'll see if anyone can get this right, because it's kind of fascinating. Like, Federer has won, I think, in his competitive tennis career, 80%, over 80% of his matches. I want you all just to think for a second, what percentage of actual points do you think he's won? So he's won 80% of his matches. What percentage of actual points has he won, do you think? Anyone got an idea? Any thoughts? So he's won over 80% of his matches. In terms of actual each point, how much has he won? Linda's saying 60%. 50 says Row. I'll give you a clue. It's somewhere in between. I think it was 54% of the points. So I find that it's really interesting. So they're basically brilliant at the game, but at each individual point, they're not expecting even to win every single point, these world-class players. They're probably thinking, hey, if I just win 54% of the points, I'm going to be a world-class player, maybe, over time, which I find a really interesting idea. And sometimes when I'm sitting at the table with really good players, I mean, the chances of me having a really, really complicated hand where I have to perform a double squeeze against a world-class player is really low, right? I'm probably just going to get a very normal hand against them, and I'm going to play it out in hopefully a normal way. And probably I'm just going to get an average board. I mean, that's going to happen mostly with bridge. So try not to let yourself get in too much of a panic about it. It's not like just because you play against an amazing player, the really, really hard hands are going to come up necessarily. And even then, they're not expecting to win every single hand either. You know, maybe it will work out for you. Okay, when things go wrong at the table. So this is when you really have to refocus and get your head in the right space again. And if you have the last hand carries forward to your next hand, I'm sure all of you have experienced this, then it can really lead to even more mistakes. You have to really, really be able to reset your brain somehow. And I'd love to hear if anyone's got any tips for what they do in this situation. I'll talk through about, what I've been talking about with people and tips that other people use. And we can discuss some of these ideas. But people do have different ways of dealing with it. One thing I quite like to do is I'll just often have, when I have a scorecard next to you at the table, if I'm playing in real life, I just make a little note sometimes of what went wrong. It's a bit like, in a way, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you know that you have something that you have to do, and it can just kind of get your brain spiraling. But sometimes if you just write it down, you sort of, first of all, you feel comfortable that you're not going to forget it, but also it gives you some sort of closure on it. So I think that's a good idea at the table. So sometimes if something really has gone wrong, either with me or my partner, I'll just make a little note. Do transfers apply here? Or did I signal wrong for my partner? So it's worth doing that because you think, okay, I know I'm going to look at that later, and then you can have closure on that. Or look at my declarer play, look at my defense. So you think, yep, that's something I need to do, but I will look at it later. So it gives you kind of a closure there and then at the table. Similar to that is reset. My partner just goes, next, when she stuffs up. She goes, next, like, I'm not even thinking about the last hand. Next hand, everybody. And she does that to make herself shut out the last hand, completely gone, and now she is dealing and focusing on the next hand. If you can learn to do this, it's huge. It's such a big advantage. This head game part of bridge is the thing that probably, I mean, maybe it really does divide the top players in the world between those who can do this effectively and those who can't. If you can just shut out the last hand, new board, shouts Judith. Yeah, brilliant. Bring the new board. I'm ready for it. If you can just shut out the last hand completely, then you can start afresh, and you're going back basically to where you were at the beginning. You're going back to being a perfectly competent bridge player who can tackle one board at a time, just like Federer. You're just going one board at a time. That was one of the 46% shots that you lost, whatever. Now you're moving on and you're just doing the next board. The self-hypnosis one I actually really like. That's also kind of a bit like Damien's little smile, actually, at the beginning when he tries to kick the ball, the self-hypnosis thing. I mean, this depends on you and the person, but I remember years ago, I went to sort of a hypnosis, learning how to do hypnosis course, like just a day course, which I found really interesting. And actually I got quite a lot from it. But one of the things they said is, if you ever want to create for you something that makes you feel calm, like a little bit of self-hypnosis, what you can do is preload yourself. I mean, this all sounds all a bit kind of airy-fairy, but I personally think it works a bit. So you can come up with something that you do. So for instance, if you have a very happy place or a happy experience that you remember, if you, sort of for a regular number of days beforehand, think of that happy thing and actually do something physical for yourself, like maybe tap your hand or something while you're thinking of that happy thing. For me, it's rubbing the inside of my palm. So basically, I have this thing, when I was rubbing the inside of my palm to think of my calm, happy place. And now sometimes at the table, so I sort of set that up. So when I do the rubbing the palm, the idea is that your brain is sort of preloaded to get those feelings of calm. If you find this all rubbish, just ignore it. But it works for me. I quite like it. So I did preload this, doing this to think of my calm, happy place. And now sometimes when I'm feeling a bit like, whoa, I just went down in a completely makeable 6 spades. Sometimes I think it's okay, like that. Yeah, maybe I don't care if it's kind of fake science, whatever. It's probably a complete placebo, but it does work a bit for me. I like it. I find it's part of my way of resetting at the table, is just to do that. And emotions can come out. No, emotions can come out you ever knew you had. That is true as well. And sometimes your little part of you might come out of the bridge table that you really wish wouldn't, and you would think afterwards, I can't believe I said that. That was really bad. So I don't know. It's a funny game, bridge. It does bring out the best and worst in people. So I think you just have to learn that, understand that, deal with that. And maybe then if you do that, you can sort of control a little bit more how you are at the table as well. Don't discuss it with your partner at the table. We've talked about this. I think that's really important. There doesn't really seem to be any benefit, I don't think, of having postmortems at the table with your partner, because it just winds both of you up. If your partner says something that's just completely wrong, if you've played a hand in a certain way and she casually points out that she thinks that you should have taken the finesse, even though that wouldn't have worked or would have not worked anyway, it will just simply make you furious at the table if you've just had a bad experience and then your partner says something negative. Or likewise, if you do the same to your partner. I just really think the best thing to do is make a little note and agree to go through everything with your partner afterwards. I think maybe you're sort of high adrenaline, a bit like my friend with the Garmin wristwatch. You're high adrenaline, you're high focused. So talking about the hands, between the hands, for me, just throws me off a wee bit. And sometimes, you know, the opponent's talking about it as well, or my partner talking about it. It means that I'll put mental energy into processing what we're talking about at the table, which is just a waste of mental energy. There's just no need to do it right there in that space right now. So that's a big tip, I think. That's really worked for me, is not talking about the hands or the bidding, anything at the table, unless it's something just completely fundamental, like, hey, we are playing low light discards, right? Or something like that. That's fine. But if it's anything else, there's no real hurry to talk about it. Talk about it later, and you'll find that you're both doing it in a calm and much more logical way, and it won't affect you on any emotional level at the table. Revert to mean. Who has read that fantastic book, Thinking Fast and Slow? Has anyone read that? It's one of my favorites. I mean, I read it years ago, but it's kind of stuck with me. It's that Danny Kahneman and someone Amos, those two behavioral economists. And I think it's such a great book. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. If you haven't read it, I really recommend it. It's a little bit like pop psychology, but it's got some really good points, and it really has stuck with me, some of the things they said, thinking fast and slow. But they talk about this idea of reverting to mean. So over a time, things will go up and things will go down, but you'll kind of revert to mean. And I think what it was they, in the example they used, I think they were talking about the Israeli army, and they were trying to work out, the coaches, whether if they praised people or criticized people after their performance, whether it would impact on how they did later. So they found that when the pilots had performed extremely well and they praised them, they tended to do worse the next time. And then they found that when they really criticized people after they had done badly, they tended to do much better the next time. But then, after more analysis, what they worked out was that simply the fighter pilots had a mean of how they perform. So if they've done really well, it's because they've done better than they will normally do. So of course they're kind of going to revert down to their normal spot. So their performance is not going down because they've been praised. Their performance is going down because they've simply reverted to mean. And when they've done really badly, they're much more likely to do better because they've reverted to mean. It's like you've just got these spikes along your performance. And I really like that. It makes me feel really comfortable. So sometimes if something goes really badly, I just think that was one of my bad peaks. We're going to revert to mean. Just sit back, relax. I will revert to mean. It's just one of those things. You're always going to go up and down like this, and you will revert to mean, no matter what you say afterwards. I find that kind of quite reassuring, that idea of reverting to mean. Okay, next one. Don't commit suicide. Who's done this? Who's thought, oh my goodness, I have just completely stuffed up a makeable 4 hearts. Now I'm just going to do weird and crazy things for the rest of the session because who cares? I'm so stupid. I might as well just try and take a massive risk to try and make it right again. It's a bit like the throw good money after bad situation as well. I see players do things like this a lot. They think, oh, I'm such a moron. I'm just going to bid whatever. I'm going to overcall now with 5 points and a really rubbish suit because maybe we'll get a massive swing. And then you get a massive swing against you again. And then you think, oh no, we're doing super, super badly. I am now going to just bid 6 no trumps, even though I don't really know if that's going to be on. I'm just going to take a massive risk against the odds to try and get a big swing in our favor. That's quite a common sort of pattern I have noticed in people, especially bridge players who haven't had quite so much experience. So instead of just trying to commit suicide, just think that was my one bad board. I'm going to revert to mean, and then just let your next boards just be around your normal mean. Don't try and take huge risks now to try and change things. Just think, yep, bad board. I'm going to revert to mean. It's not all over. Don't commit suicide at the table. And don't beat yourself up as well. One thing I notice is people really sometimes take it super personally when they do something, especially if they've been the declarer and they've played a hand badly. They feel very, very exposed. You sort of feel like, oh no, everyone at the table will know that I'm an intellectual lightweight, and they will all be laughing about what a big Dumbo I am. But actually, it's not true. They hardly ever will. Most people at the bridge table, if you declare a hand badly, most people will think it's because it's their great defense, most opponents. They much prefer the story that they are great defenders than the fact that you are a bad declarer. Most people won't be thinking about you at all. They'll be thinking about them. So sometimes if I stuff up and I'm a declarer, I might just say, great defense. Ops, that was really good. Great defense. You got me. Something like that. And take it off you and let it be on them, and they'll be probably thinking it's them anyway. They'll hardly ever be thinking about you afterwards. They'll just be thinking, hey, we did brilliantly on that board. They won't be thinking you're such a loser. They'll be going into their egos instead and thinking, oh, yes, we got them down. So I kind of find a little bit of comfort in that as well. Let's see what we've got next. Okay, don't worry about not getting the points at the table. So this is a little kid at a birthday party, I guess, where he doesn't get all the presents he wants. So in bridge, especially when you're playing in a duplicate, where you're either getting 0% or 100% or in a team match, it's not actually, weirdly, about having the points. It can feel sometimes when you're having one of those games and you just keep picking up a balanced 8 count, a balanced 7 count over and over again, you get really frustrated and bored. You think, oh, for goodness sake, give me a decent hand. I want a decent hand. I'm so sick of this rubbish. And then you start doing dumb things. But just remember that each hand has got potential. So everybody in the room will, depending on which form of bridge you're playing, but people will have that hand. Other people will have that hand too. So if you get bored because you keep picking up balanced 7 counts and start doing stupid things, you will treat that 7 count much worse than somebody else's, well, you will use that 7 count much worse than somebody else is using that 7 count. So every hand has got potential in it. Sometimes you might have a 0 count and you make a trick. I guess I'm sure all of you have had an experience sometimes where you make a trick with it, like a very small card at the end because you've kept the right card. Like each hand has potential. Don't get lazy because you're picking up bad hands. The other night, there was a nice chap who was playing in my duplicate and he just got bored. And because he got bored, he started doing dumb things like opening with balanced 10 counts. And because he started doing dumb things, he started doing really badly. But everyone else in the duplicate had the boring 10 count as well. But then he got bottom boards because he was getting bored, but the others didn't. So don't think, oh, I hate this balanced hand. I'm going to do something with it. I'm going to overcall with a 4-card suit, or I'm going to open this rubbish hand because I just want to get involved. Try to resist that urge. Try and think, yep, this is my hand. This is what I've been dealt. It will have potential. I'm not just going to do something stupid because I'm slightly bored, and play each hand as a potential opportunity. Think of it. This could be something in this for me. I can't relax. I can't give up just because I'm bored. Okay, I like this one. Understanding the big mouth. This is kind of a little bit what we talked about, I think, when we were talking about people chatting at the table. When you come to the table and the opponents are going like this and talking and talking and talking. And you also get some people who just love mansplaining or woman-splaining to you. This is quite funny, by the way. Try not to be sexist here. But when I wrote in mansplaining on my slide, it didn't come up with any little red line under it. It was sort of a recognized word. And then I wrote in woman-splainer, and it was like, question mark, what does this mean? I thought, yes, funny. Mansplaining exists, but woman-splaining doesn't. But actually, of course, we know that's not true at all. And there are definitely woman-splainers out there as well as mansplainers. So I used to, as I was starting out with my bridge, I used to listen to people a lot more at the table. And sometimes you do get good advice from people at the table, but sometimes people are just plain wrong. And some people are very confident at the bridge table. So they'll say things very confidently, and sometimes they're just completely wrong. So just be aware that there are those sorts of people. I mean, there are those sorts of people in all aspects of life where they'll confidently say something. Just take it with a pinch of salt. Like, they might be right. I mean, ask them a bit more about it if you want to. Write it down. Send me what they've said. Like, post onto the questions what people have said at the table to you. But don't give it too much information. Don't give it too much, credit when people are saying things at the table. There are definitely some people who will say, oh, of course you should have done this, or of course you should have done that. But just maybe not. But don't necessarily give it too much. Don't waste too much time on listening to the big mouth at the table. Just do your own research after. Maybe say, oh, thank you for that. But don't take it all on board. I had, again, the other night when I was playing, there's a chap who was playing, and I jumped off the video because I had to do something, and I heard him saying something, and it was just so completely and utterly wrong. But he was saying it so confidently to the other two players. I thought, oh no, what's he saying? He's completely wrong. But he was saying it like, oh yes, of course, such and such and such and such. And I thought, oh no, they're going to completely get the wrong end of the stick now, these two other players, because this chap has told them something totally wrong. So I had to sort of quietly message him later and say, actually, I wouldn't play it that way. This is possibly a better way to play it, or whatever. But those people are kind of interesting. You definitely get them at the bridge table. Take them with a grain of salt. Okay, dealing with the bully. Okay, so this is a really unpleasant aspect of bridge. I personally think it's getting better. I don't think there are as many bullies as there used to be. I don't know about everyone else's experience, but I think it feels like it's getting better. I'm not sure why. Maybe we're all nicer after COVID. Who knows? But there will be some people at the table who behave in a really, really nasty and quite unacceptable way. And I think maybe it's an intimidation technique. I think sometimes they're trying to throw you, possibly put you in an uncomfortable space so that when you're sitting down at the table and you've kind of done your thing and you've got your head in the right space, they're trying to kind of rock that a wee bit, which is, I mean, it's such bad form. And very few people do it in reality. I don't want to make out that bridge is this nasty game where everybody does this, because it's just not. But there are some people who behave like this. Like, I had these women in England sort of women's trials, and they would do things like purposefully mess up all the dummy hand. So it was all higgledy-piggledy all over the place with all cards touching each other, which you can't do. You have to have the dummy laid out properly. But they would do it because they knew that I didn't like it. So they knew that I would get wound up by it. And it's like so childish and so immature. And these really, really good players that were behaving like this. And it's so bad. And like the first time it happened, I thought, oh, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm going to call the director. But then I found, because I called the director and asked him to do this, it did put me on edge because I took action about it. So even though I was completely right and called the director and said, look, they're trying to they're being stupid. These people are being really unkind. Could you please tell them to straighten up the dummy because I can't see it properly? When I did that and took that action, it actually made me feel more wound up. Like it made me feel anxious and annoyed. I had to explain it to the director. It made a thing out of it for me. So even though I'm in the right there, it did make a thing out of it for me. And then I did really badly, which is exactly what they wanted on the next hand. I did do badly. And so they got everything they wanted, these two women. So now when I come across them, I've got it in my head that if I sit down against these two women and it's an important game, I think I really like messed up dummies. I'm good at handling messed up dummies. I'm one of those people that can do it. It's completely fine. If these two put down a terrible, terrible, appalling messed up dummy, then I can cope with it. And I find that for me better than trying to sort it out, because it won't get me in such a panic. And I just try and laugh at them a wee bit on the inside and think, oh my God, they're such losers, those women. If I take that approach, that works better for me than taking sort of positive action. Rosemary's asked, are you allowed to straighten the dummy hand of the ops if they always put it down badly or have it facing more towards them? So I think, Rosemary, the answer is you are not allowed to touch the dummy if you're in defense. And I think even when you're declarer, you're not allowed to touch the dummy, actually, but I'd have to check on that. I don't think you can. But also, I do know that they have to put the dummy in the rule book. They do have to put the dummy down facing the declarer, straight facing the declarer, and it has to be, the cards can't be touching between the four suits, so it has to be in an orderly way. So there are rules about it for this reason, I suppose. So you can ask them, you can just say, oh, would you mind straightening your dummy, please? Some people just throw the dummy down all over the place. If I think it's people who are nice people who just don't really care about the dummy, then I'll just say, would you mind straightening the dummy? And sometimes I'll say, would you mind if I straighten the dummy? And everyone will say no, apart from weird people who are trying to intimidate you. So they'll probably just say, yeah, no, that's fine. So if it does bother you, you can absolutely ask them to straighten the dummy, or you can ask them if they wouldn't mind if you straighten the dummy. So you're totally entitled to do that at the table. Most people will not be doing it for intimidating reasons. Most people will just be doing it because it doesn't bother them. They just sort of throw it down. But the cards should be facing the declarer. They shouldn't be side on, and they shouldn't all be touching between the different suits. Okay, I think there's someone else coming in with a question, but I'll just keep watching that one. Okay, post-mortem. I think this is important. So we did say, look, it's better not to talk about the hands as you go through. But what is really good is keeping a record of everything that went right, everything that went wrong, and talking about it with your partner at the end of the session. I think this is a huge way of improving your game when you do this, because you'll really start picking up on things. You'll start picking up on sort of partnership misunderstandings. So keeping a record of the hands you play and writing down little notes as you play will really, really help you. Go through them, work out what's wrong with the bidding, work out maybe you should adopt a particular extra sort of bidding thing as well. Perhaps you could take something else on, improve your bidding. So that is a good way to focus your play. If you just clean the slate after each session and don't look at the hands, don't work out what went wrong, you won't improve anywhere near as much as if you do sit down and do a little post-mortem with your partner afterwards. Send me questions. Say, Bridget, this came up. I've had some great questions sent to me. Had a really good one the other day about whether you should be opening a very shapely 9 count. And I said, no, don't do it. Wait to see what happens. But to go through, just think about the hands afterwards. Work out what went wrong. And you will really learn from the experience. So you can see what happened and you can try and do your best and move forward. What's Rosemary said again? If they put 2 reds and then 2 blacks next to each other, do they have a right to leave it like that? I'm not sure, actually. I mean, clearly you have to have, if you're talking about the trumps, you have to have the trumps on the right side. I always put them down red, black when I'm the dummy. But I don't know if that's an actual requirement or not. I'm not sure. You'd have to look it up. I don't know. But I kind of tend to like it like that, but maybe that's just me liking it like that. So I'm not 100% sure on that one. Oh, they refuse. Yeah. I mean, if people refuse to do these things with a dummy, it's what we said before. Just think, what's going to benefit me the most? Is it going to benefit me to the most just to let it go? Just think, oh, whatever. Or is it going to benefit me to do something about it? So for me personally, I find I do much better if I just think I'm letting it go. Think, losers, whatever. I can deal with this. I'm going to be playing some more opponents in another board or 2. I find that I will personally get more wound up if I create conflict at the table. And I don't like having to have a mini battle at the table over something. I just find it uncomfortable. I don't like it. I would rather just concede it and just take the moral high ground and think these people are just silly, taking the game too seriously. That's just a silly way to play. We're all here because we love bridge. We're all here to have a nice time. Why on earth would you behave in such a silly way? Really, I do that purely because it's better for me. If I loved a bit of a fight and a bit of aggression, I suppose I would take it the other way. And then I would think, yes, I get revved up by a bit of aggression. This is going to really make me focus. I'm going to do much better. Then maybe I would. But for me, I find it much better if I can keep myself calm. And by keeping myself calm, the way I do that is by letting things go sometimes at the table, just not getting into that little battle that they want me to get into. That's sometimes what they're actually trying to do. But like we said, this doesn't actually happen that often. I think people are much, much nicer than they used to be. You used to get some really sort of nasty people. But even then, even back in the nasty days, it's the exception. It's not the norm. I think most people are very, very nice. Most people want to be at the bridge table because they enjoy bridge. Most people love learning the game. Most people love getting better at the game. Most people are really similar like that. There's only a few who behave like this, but it's good. It's good thinking about having tactics to deal with these people. So when it comes up, you know what you're going to do. Dealing with a bridge confidence crisis. Okay, who's had a bridge confidence crisis here? So I'm not talking about at the table. I'm talking about like just generally. Who's just thought, oh, maybe this game's not for me. Oh, this is just awful. I'm hopeless. I asked some of my friends what they had. I've got some funny ones. What have I got? This is one of my friends. She said, I have literally had so many self-hate moments at bridge that I wouldn't know where to start. Times are plenty where I've decided I'm an idiot and I'm never playing again because I just let people down. And then I had somebody else saying, I feel so stupid and embarrassed. I feel like I did when I was learning something when I was a small kid. I can't go on. And then somebody else said that she actually gave up. A woman I was teaching last week said, I'm coming back. I've given up. I'd given up for a week. I was playing bridge and the opponents opened a week 2. And my partner overcalled 2 no trumps, which shows 16 to 18, balanced hand, a stopper in the week 2. And I didn't realize that our transfers applied. And I bid naturally. And she looked like she's going to cry. And then she said, and of course, transfers do apply. And she said, I just couldn't live with myself. I literally couldn't go back and play bridge for a week. I felt so ill, so disappointed in myself. She couldn't do it. She just had this crisis of confidence. And she said, I nearly gave up. And I'm just venturing back into bridge now. And it does just happen. I think everyone has it. And actually there's a few, top players I've heard talk about it, and they all have had moments where they have a bridge crisis. They feel like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this game. But it's so normal. Like every single person really I know at some stage has had a bridge crisis. You get some super calm people who don't, but most people have. It's just a normal. I think it's probably a normal part of the bridge learning thing that happens to you. And as you play bridge, it's one of the joys of bridge is it's such a huge game with so much involved with it. But as you play, you just realize there's so much you don't know. And sometimes you just think, oh, it's terrible. But instead of thinking about all the stuff you don't know, think about what you do know. I mean, think of the positives I've got here, how much more you know than before. Sometimes you look back and think, I've really come on a long way in a year. I've done really well. Of course, there's things I don't know. My friend Kathy, who said that she didn't know about transfers over her opponent's 2-no trump overcall. How can you know what you don't know? You can't know what you don't know. Just be forgiving on yourself. It's not the end of the world if you don't know something and you know it now. Fine. Just think of it like that. But when I have my bridge crisis confidence, and I absolutely do. In fact, I had a really bad bridge crisis confidence about a month ago, where everything I seemed to do as declarer was just going wrong. I really struggled. I seemed to be making mistake after mistake. And then I started thinking when the hands came up, I was thinking, oh gosh, I hope I can work this out because I'm not doing very well at my declarer play at the moment. And then I would make another mistake. And you can get into a bit of a downward spiral. And the way I dealt with that is there's a wonderful teacher I have in England, and I said, I just want to book some lessons in with you, please. I want to do 4 lessons on declarer play just to get my confidence back. Got it back. It's fine. Sometimes you need to come up with a strategy for your confidence crisis. So think to yourself, this happens to every person, apart from a few super calm, relaxed people, but it happens to almost everybody. It's totally normal to get worse at your bridge before you move forward again. Just completely normal. You'll be going like this, and then you learn things, and it's almost like it goes from your conscious to your subconscious, or your subconscious to your conscious. You start overthinking, your whole game collapses, and then it goes up again slowly. So it's very normal. If you often look at people's results, and the English Bridge Union, for instance, you can track your results and your performance. You'll see times in your life where you've gone up, then you've gone boom down, and then you can go up again. And I looked at mine once, and I had been going up. I was learning for the first year. I went up and up and up, sort of happily going up with my percentages. And then I think probably what happened is I became aware that there was a lot to learn. And I started thinking about things a lot, reading about things a lot, and learning things a lot. And I think maybe because I was thinking about things, I started not behaving in an instinctive way at the table. I was thinking about things and getting it wrong. So because I was thinking, I was actually making a bad choice. Whereas when I wasn't thinking so much, I was subconsciously often making the right choice. But because I was thinking, which is a good thing, but I wasn't thinking well yet because I didn't have the experience. And my learning curve went like this, and then it just went boomf, and then just slowly came up again, which is really interesting. So if you have access to that on the English Bridge Union, if you're in England, I'm not sure about other countries. I'm sure they've got something similar. It's kind of interesting to see how your game is improving if you are playing in duplicates and you sort of have access to that information. So you will dip back sometimes before you go forward, especially if you're learning a new system or you become aware of something, you'll try things out, then you'll realize it's slightly the wrong situation, you've slightly got it wrong. So that's very normal. Just that's part of the process. So sometimes embracing these things can really help. Think of the positives. We've covered that, how much more you know than before. Come up with your improvement plan. This is what I do. I definitely do this. I just think, okay, I know I'm in a bad place right now with my declarer play. Let's work out how to get my head around. Like I said, I booked in 4 lessons with this great person. Practice hands are just so good. It's brilliant. Go onto BridgeBase, do that Bridge Master we were talking about. Go through as many videos that you can on this great learning platform you've got here. You can go into them all. You can look at as many as you like, which is just wonderful. And you just go over and over, and that will make you think, yes, got that now. I've learned that. Practice sessions with your partner, also a really good thing. Do some bidding sessions with your partner. If you find that you and your partner are getting into a bit of a pickle, sit down and practice with that. Make a commitment to yourself to read more. Maybe get a bridge book that you like, like we said, and do some more lessons. But there's lots of things that you can do to improve your game. So sometimes having a sort of little plan to get better can make you feel more confident and get you out of your crisis. But just remember, bridge crises are normal. They happen to everyone. Sometimes maybe you just need a break. Maybe sometimes you've just overdone the bridge. It's just been a bit too much. Maybe your brain needs just a little bit of a rest from it. Just take some time until you love the game again. That's not the end of the world either. You can overdo things sometimes. It's like anything in the world. Turn your weaknesses into strengths. Okay, so be honest with yourself about weaknesses. I think this is a lot of people struggle with this sort of thing with all aspects of life again. It's very difficult sometimes to say that's where I'm not very good. People find it quite hard. Just be honest. Think I'm really struggling to cope with something. I'm really not very good about coping with bad splits, perhaps. You might think, oh, when trumps are split badly, I always get this wrong. I always get this wrong. So think, okay, I'm not good at bad splits. That's what I'm not good at. I'm going to start learning about bad splits. I'm going to make that my best thing. I'm going to become the bridge experts on bad splits when I'm playing in trumps. That can be a really positive way to move forward with something that you struggle with. Just accept it. That's not what you're good at. And think, I'm going to learn and learn and learn this until I get really good at it. So turn it into one of your strengths. Sometimes the thing to do is actually weirdly kind of almost the placebo thing. So sometimes I'll say to myself, when I was having my declare a play confidence, rather than thinking, oh God, I'm terrible at this, sometimes I'll think, okay, I'm going to do the Damien McKenzie, I'm going to do the re-smile and do this and think, I'm a great declare player. I know I'm a great declare player. So almost trick myself into getting my confidence back. Think, yep, I'm really good at this. I can do it. Or if I'm feeling nervous, I'll try and do a little bit of my self-hypnosis things to get myself back in a good place. I remember once when I was in a competition, I'd heard this piece or something about humans. And when humans have all done well in something, like when someone wins a 100-meter race, or when someone gets actually no need to talk about the football. No, let's talk about the rugby. When someone wins the rugby, what people naturally do is they throw their arms in the air because it gives them some sort of, well, the theory is, I think, is it gives you some sort of endorphin release. You go, whoa, I've got an endorphin release. So people all do that, like all over the world, all different cultures. When something great happens to people, they throw their arms in the air. It's something that, and it creates some sort of feeling of endorphins or some sort of happiness. And I remember once feeling a bit like, oh God, I'm feeling a bit stressed, feeling a bit awful. I was in a sort of important competition. And I had read that you can actually fake this feeling by putting your arms in the air. So I went into the loo, put my arms in the air, but right, I'm going to get those endorphins. I'm going to feel like this. I'm going to feel positive. And so, I mean, it probably sounds like I'm a bit of a weirdo, and I agree that it is a bit weird, but thankfully no one could see me. But just do what you think works. Like if you can just kind of hack your own self and hack your confidence, then try and do it. It can work for you. Yeah, okay, this is the last one. If you decide that you're going to get good at bridge, you'll get good at bridge. And this is what I love about the game. Because it's such an experienced game, if you put the time in, you put the energy in, you think about the hands and you work through it, you really will become a good bridge player. You just will. And have confidence in that. There's been some people, when I started teaching a lot of bridge, I did have, on occasion, I had some people who I really thought just it wasn't their game. I thought that this woman, she's really struggling. She's really just doesn't seem to get sort of very, very basic concepts. And I was thinking, should she be carrying on with the game? But she was she really persevered, this woman, and she did everything. And she went and bought the bridge table, and she went and bought all the kit, and she got all the books, and she came along to all the lessons, and she's fine. She's absolutely fine. She's doing really well with her bridge. So just persevere. You can do it. Don't give up. You'll get some people who act so confident at the beginning. You'll think, I'm not like them. He or she's just a natural, but persevere. You will get it. If you put the time in and you focus and you understand and you come up with tips, you will get it. You will become a good bridge player. It's just true. Like you might not become a world-class bridge player, but you'll become a good bridge player where you're happy with your game. So that's a nice thought to end on. Has anyone got any questions? I was hoping to do some hands vote, but we ended up just talking about so many psychological bridge tips that I think we're almost at the end of the session. But if anyone's got any funny little stories, I would love to hear your funny stories. Yeah, and if you've got advice that works for you, also tell me, because I love hearing all these things and all the different things that people do. But it's a head game. It really, really is. And if you can get your head in the right place with bridge, it will massively change your outcome. And when your head's in the wrong place, it's not great. But hopefully we've talked about some strategies today to get your head in the right place, and hopefully you will be able to use some of those and get some results with that. I wonder if Bashir's got any moments where he's had sort of a bridge crisis confidence. I bet he has. See if we're getting him back in a minute.
Every day, Bridget, every day. Every day I think I have a mini bridge crisis. This lesson was just so helpful. I think helpful both, for us at the bridge table, and then just constantly, as is so often the case, just thinking, and in life, everything.
I know. It is. It's a metaphor for life, isn't it?
Oh gosh, so helpful. So many golden nuggets. I think so many of us will return to, but just a reminder to be patient with ourselves. I love the mix of the advice of acknowledging or reminding ourselves, right, everyone goes through this.
Yeah.
And be proactive.
Yeah. Take ownership of it.
Right. I love it. It was really, I feel so inspired. I can't wait to get back to play some hands. So yeah. We'll all have to see how we do this week.
Yeah. Well, look, have a lovely holiday as well.
Thank you so much, Bridget. I will. I will be around, as I said. Reach out anyone for any reason, and I'm sure you'll all be you'll provide Caroline a wonderful welcome back to the class next week. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody. See you later.